This is a Cosmic Octave original podcast.
Me and Jake running down the street with a handful of comic books, kicking ass and banging chicks and drinking booze
No, not
and
me.
smoking
Not
weed.
me. I'm married.
Yeah, well,
I'm married.
Jake.
Can't do that.
Yeah. Off panel, off topic with Jake and Tyler.
What's up, everybody? A rare Friday release, and I know what you're thinking. You're probably thinking, episode 67, why did it take so long to this get uploaded? Where was the episode on Monday? Well, all 5 of you, I do want to apologize. Some tech difficulties is what happened, and it was a situation that I didn't think would be a problem. Turned out it was. We recorded a whole 2-hour episode, and the file got corrupted and got lost into the ether, as it goes with technology. So I do apologize for that. So to make up for it, Tyler and we didn't have a chance to meet this week because I'm going to be going off to record our Halloween episode. So things got a little jumbled in our schedule, but we will figure things out. So I thought, and he thought, that it would be a good idea to just, since he's got his own recording equipment, to just record our thoughts separately and just kind of put them together. And I want to talk a little bit about episode 8 and episode 9 of She-Hulk. I'll also put together his thoughts on episode 8 and 9, and we'll also do Andor. And that'll be pretty much it for this week, since I have to go record the Halloween episode. We're also going to have a throwback episode. Way back in February of 2021, when we used to do Tinfoil Radio, we did a whole episode about how the Snyder Cut created this like cult-like mentality. And it's actually a pretty interesting episode, giving how the stuff that came out about Warner Brothers regretting releasing it and feeding these trolls and all this other stuff, where we kind of talked about that a lot. So it is kind of a weird time capsule. I think I said some harsh things about Ray Fisher, and then I apologized for it later on this show, and now I don't think I'm back to disliking Ray Fisher given the new information. Yeah, it's kind of crazy how that whole stuff occurred, and maybe we'll talk more about it on this episode, but it's an interesting throwback episode for you coming up on Monday. So we're releasing this on Friday and then giving you an episode on Monday. That's how we're making up for the mistakes that we made. Content. And then, Black Adam, and then Halloween special. So it's going to be an interesting couple weeks here on the podcast. So let's get into what you're here to listen or watch if you're watching us on YouTube. She-Hulk, episode 8 and 9. So, very briefly, Daredevil was great. I think this is the best interpretation of Daredevil I've seen on screen. Charlie Cox still has such an amazing presence and control of this character and understanding of this character. So fucking charming. He's incredible. Tatiana and his chemistry is off the charts. Jen and Matt really worked well together on screen. And yeah, I really enjoyed those two interacting. Pretty much all I have to say about episode 8 in a very brief frame, because I really, really enjoyed episode 8, and I really love this finale. So let's talk about the finale, most importantly. Now, I think there's people that are going to have... I have friends that I think have some valid criticisms of this episode and the show as a whole. And I do believe they are valid, and I do understand them, but for the most part, I can overlook them because I really, really enjoy this show. I fucking love this show. And this episode kind of really solidified that this is... and I know you could probably accuse me of someone who like gets swept up in the moment of these MCU shows, and that's fair. You could probably say that, but like when I think about all of the MCU shows top to bottom, I think I like this one. I think I would have to shuffle around. I think it would be She-Hulk, WandaVision, and Loki would definitely be my top 3. I think everything other than those, either I felt like could have been a movie, or they just seemed like they rushed it because it was only 6 episodes. And I really felt that with Moon Knight and Miss Marvel towards the end. And this show, yes, has its ups and downs. It's not a perfect show all the way through. I think, again, there's valid criticisms of it. But this episode especially really just solidified that these writers really knew what they were doing and really understood the character. I mean, like, okay, so the fact that we get an episode where she's locked up after her taking down all the screens at the award ceremony, and she's pretty much where Abomination was. She's got to wear the inhibitor. She can't turn into She-Hulk. She loses her job. She's living with her parents. It's all bad. Also, we got to even touch on the fact that the cold open for this show is the fucking shot-for-shot recreation of the 70s Incredible Hulk show. And I can't wait to hear Tyler's thoughts on that, because he's actually someone that was able to watch it. So I would love to hear his thoughts, but just me knowing what that, because I honestly thought it was like $6 Million Man for a minute, and I was like, no, wait a minute, that's the fucking, and the, like, when it went on the eyes, I was like, that's the fucking Incredible Hulk intro. And it was great. And the fact that the title card was the Savage She-Hulk, I thought that was a really nice touch. And then the fact that the narrator shows up later and she's like, no, we're not doing that. You know, this is still, and what is consistent about this show, and it drives me crazy, is people insist that this isn't She-Hulk, and I'm like, are you fucking kidding me? This isn't John Byrne's She-Hulk. What are you talking about? What are you talking about when you watch this show? Because most of John Byrne's run is She-Hulk actively having a fight with him, the writer. And that's what this show has done the whole run. It's constantly having an interaction with you, the audience. And I think what's so funny, and Tyler will say this too, and Tyler will probably say this in his review of it, but it's the same shit. If they would just pay attention to the messaging, they would really like this show. All the chuds, all the fucking grifters that pretend to hate this shit, or possibly do hate this shit. Who knows at this point? But if they'd actually pay attention and not just immediately go into something wanting to hate it, they would understand that most of their gripes, the things they bitch about, are addressed in this show and are used as a joke against the MCU. It's the most self-referential the MCU has ever been. I mean, for fuck's sake, the way that this show ends is so insane and over the top and meta. It's fucking perfect for the character, because by the way, I don't have my phone up. Pizza time. I'm spoiling the shit out of this episode. How can I not? But there's a point where all of the storylines converge in a really ridiculous, over the top way that was effective. So we have her being, living with her parents, trying to figure out who's leading intelligentsia. Her friend gets a video of her twerking in college that puts it on the website that, like, gets her into a party with all the incels. Sorry, no, just chuds. I don't want to say incel. Yeah, fuck it. Incel chuds. Who cares? I don't want to get banned. She goes to that party, or her friend Pug goes to that party. Then we eventually find out the Abomination's speaking at there. We also find out that Todd is the Hulk King, which is super obvious. And he wanted her blood because he talked about her. Like, they super telegraph that, which I think, again, is on purpose, which makes it so funny, is like it telegraphs everything it's doing. It's in on the joke. The whole show is silly. It is in on its. It knows it's being ridiculous. It knows it's playing with comic books, and it's playing with comic book tropes, and that's what John Byrne's run did. That's what made She-Hulk what she is. And again, people are overlooking that and seeing that there are valid, funny criticisms of the MCU. Just a shame. It's a shame. No, I really enjoy it. And so we find out Abomination is speaking. First of all, he transformed into the transformed into the Abomination. He is speaking at the intelligentsia thing. We also find out that Jen can't get a hold of Hulk. So there's that other plot thread they dangle. And then they have the moment of she finally just like everything converges. Hulk shows up to fight out of nowhere to fight Abomination. You have Titania breaking through the wall unexplicably. Like, how did she know that they were there? You know, shit like that. Where I was actively watching it, being like, there's got to be a joke here. Like, this. What are we doing? And then the fact that she pauses the show and puts up the Disney Plus menu. And when that happened, I was watching it with my wife, and I legitimately was like I froze for a second. Like, wait a minute, did this just like? Because you know what I thought of? I thought of there's a scene in like halfway through Batman Arkham Asylum, and there's a moment where you're having a scarecrow hallucination, and the screen freezes and glitches, and it looks like it fucks up your game, and it like looks like it does a hard crash on your game, and then it goes to the next, like replaying the first shot from the beginning of the game. And so yeah, when that Disney Plus screen popped up, I'm like, wait a minute, what? And then when she says, yeah, you think the menu is going to stop me, and she punches through the She-Hulk icon on the website, that is fucking epic, because that is almost an exact shot from the comic of her ripping through a panel to yell at John Byrne. And I'm like, that is so fucking hilarious. And then she finds the documentary series that they do for movies, the Assembled, kicks through that, gets into the Marvel Studios headquarters. Well, first goes to the writers, says, what the hell are we doing? He gets my blood and transforms into a Hulk. Like, this is stupid. This is, like, we need something new. We need to do something different. And then you got to talk to Kevin. But then I noticed, before this reveal, when they said Kevin, it was periods. It was like an acronym. So I was like, oh, I see what's going on. And then, she goes to the headquarters. You have to sign an NDA. She says no. They hit a panic button because everybody signs an NDA. Hilarious. And then when she gets in there, Kevin is a fucking robot. Is an android. An algorithm like android. And that's so funny. Even the top of the robot looks like his ball cap. And then again, it right there, front and center, the show itself drives home the point of the finale of being, this is not what you were expecting, because this was not the show you thought it was. And I can understand how a lot of people might not like that. And I think my wife is a great example. She liked the episode overall, but she just wished narratively there's a little bit more of an ending. And I think that's a fair criticism. I would say that the show just kind of ends, and it does feel very rushed at the end. As much as this whole section of her going through, beating up people, like, you get an action scene, the action sequence of the third act of this episode is her just beating up a couple dudes in a hallway. And then we get to the robot. Like, that's just, it's so perfect for what the show was always doing. This was always supposed to be a slice of life show. That's what Jessica Gao said in some interviews. That's what they were really going for, is this is a comedy first and foremost. And it is doing what sitcoms do. And it ends with a finale that was like, oh, that was satisfying. But it doesn't really, it's inconsequential. Because these guys, they're just going to go back to being what they are. And it's the same as comic books. It's the same as everything, long-term, long-running. And it also, again, references that. Where, like, the stakes are so high. And there's always a world-ending event. So, again, valid criticisms of the genre coming through in the show. And I think it's such a fun, smart show. And look, I could see how it doesn't land with some people. I could see how people wanted, like, we're actually maybe invested in these characters and probably didn't get to see a fitting end. And I could understand that. But I mean, it just worked, man. I don't know how else, because I feel like I'm just rambling about and gushing about how much I love it, but it was just a smart episode and so much in line with the character. And I think the reason I love it, I'll probably go back and watch it again and love it even more, because this show is always supposed to be a fun little poke and prod at the MCU, which is what She-Hulk was with Marvel Comics. And I don't know if there's going to be a season 2. I think I would love a season 2. Also, another thing I forgot to talk about that I want to talk about, when she's talking to Kevin, she legit says, "When are we getting the X-Men?" Looks at the camera and winks, puts a thumbs up. And then there's a part where she's still She-Hulk, and Kevin is asking her to change because she's too expensive, which is in line with what the comics would say. And the fact that I don't think this is intentional as a joke, because of when this show was made. I do understand how some people might think the visual effects bit is a little insensitive. I feel like you could read that. Me personally, I thought it was just a joke and being like, this show is already done. We're working on Black Panther. Black Panther's. I think it was a wink and a nod to be like, okay, Feige said we have to kind of steer people into, hey, remember, in a couple weeks, Black Panther. Like that was like the MCU thing they had to do, was when they said the visual effects artist has moved on to another thing, they started playing the Wakanda like war drums. That's the way I could interpret it, but I also could see how people might think that's insensitive, given all this stuff with the visual effects artists and the whole video with Taika Waititi, and like I should have had the soundboard up for the Tiki Waititi, but I could see how somebody could read that, but me personally, I read it as they were just making a joke of like, hope you enjoyed She-Hulk, but now remember Black Panther. Like, I think that was kind of the joke, but could be wrong. But yeah, I think that I do have some criticisms of it. I thought the ending, again, was fine. I think it worked well. They even had the whole Fast and the Furious thing. I do I do love the bit, like, my wife and I both had a good laugh when she said Hulk smashes things, because she literally breaks the MCU. And he's like, you just smashed this. And she's like, yeah, well, Hulk smashes buildings. I smash bad writing. And sometimes Matt Murdock. Good laugh. They bring him back in. And I joked, or I thought after episode 8, I'd won the bet. I was like, he shows up in episode 8, whatever. But at the same time, I was like, is he going to show up? I hope he shows up in episode 9. Sure enough, he gets dropped in there because she just demanded it in the script, which is fucking so hilarious. And he's in costume. It's amazing. Then they had the Fast and the Furious barbecue, which is, I think, what they were trying to do. And if they weren't, funny unintentionally. But if they weren't trying that, still funny. One of my big gripes, though, is Hulk showing back up with Scar, his son, which I guess is trying to lay the groundwork for World War Hulk, but I don't know. It doesn't work as well, because you really need Planet Hulk for World War Hulk to be really effective. And it just, I don't know, man. That's just my opinion as someone who's read it recently. That's just how I think. But overall, I really enjoyed She-Hulk. I think Tyler would say the same. I have a great time watching it. And I'm not trying to implore any recency bias, but I think top to bottom, I really enjoyed it. When I kind of go back and I think about these shows, I do fall victim to recency bias sometimes with, well, this, Hawkeye just came out, I fucking love that the most, or, oh, Loki was the best, or da-da-da. I think I keep running into that, and for me right now, I think I've enjoyed this the most. WandaVision would probably be number 2, and then Loki number 3. I enjoyed Hawkeye, but I don't know. This is the one project I personally felt like it was fine in its length and the amount of episodes. I think it was fine being half an hour. I think there are some things where I just didn't really care about. There's some plot lines where I was like, eh. And I would have liked them to do a little bit more in the courtrooms, things like that. But at this point, for me, it's nitpicks. I enjoyed watching the show. And I do hope it gets a season 2, or at the very least, I hope and I think they're teasing that Jen is definitely going to be in a movie, but I like how they tease, like, maybe a movie. I don't know. Maybe a season 2. I do love the joke that they were going to make season 2 an elaborate or an extended dream sequence, which amazing. Anyway, I love She-Hulk. I will give it maybe on a scale of 5. I don't like doing 10. I feel like it's too big, so I will give it 4 She-Hulks out of 5 She-Hulks. Solid show. There's a couple things that I didn't like. Honestly, it might be a little bit nitpicky. I enjoyed it. Had a good time. Hope you did too. Here's Tyler's thoughts on She-Hulk.
So here's my review of the finale of She-Hulk. I want to make it clear, first of all, that if you've not been a fan of the show so far, I got to be honest. The people that you're listening to that say that it's bad, and it may be yourself, it may be your own opinion, and that's fair. That's fine. If it's your own opinion, I find nothing wrong with you having your own opinion that the show sucks. It's when you blindly follow somebody else's opinion who's online making a lot of money off of a bullshit opinion that they don't even believe. But let me get that out of the way. The first thing is I mean, right away off the bat, I grew up with the Bill Bixby, Lou Ferrigno Hulk show. So obviously the intro with the 70s style is just right up my alley. The fact that it kind of comes full circle, and at first you're like, okay, this kind of sucks for She-Hulk. You're like, well, why is this happening to her? And I really genuinely like Tatiana Maslany, and the character the characterization of Jennifer Walters that she's been able to do, and you really root for this character, and so you're like, man, this sucks, because like now it looks like just everything is just coming apart at the seams. You almost knew that like Abomination was going to be like the guest speaker at that at the Intelligentsia retreat or whatever, and I mean, look, when all these like RK Outposts and people get together, like I guarantee you that's what they talk. Like that's how they talk to each other. Like, yeah, you're looking they completely miss the irony of like who they really are, and that's maybe why they're so mad. But no, and I'm not casting aspersions about anybody's sexuality or anything. That's on you to decide, or I mean, you to figure out. It's not a choice. I'm getting off the rails here. It's off panel, off topic. Fuck off. But when it comes down to it, this show was exactly what the MCU needed. It was exactly rather a direct response to every single critic that's been out there about the MCU. The reason why some people call me a Marvel shill. The reason why I love Marvel so much is because I grew up with the comic books. These are characters that I've lived with my whole life. And so, yeah, and that's why when you guys all get upset over like race swapping a character, that's why it's not amusing to me. It sort of is, because it's more troubling, but there's a part of me that's amused by it because I've lived with these characters all my life, and I have no problem with the Black Professor X. Now, just saying, so just this is what I like about this show, is that it has done everything, every criticism that I have about the MCU, and there are some, is addressed with this show. It's directed head on at the audience, like, hey, you think this sucks? Well, this is, this. And it's just, to me, it's really brilliant how they did it. And Kevin, and he's got his little hat. That was fucking awesome. Now, Jake has brought to my attention, and I kind of knew this already, that John Byrne is a piece of shit. And back in, I can't remember when the first Fantastic Four, the Tim Story, I think it was Tim Story, was it? Who directed it with, Chris Evans and Jessica Alba and whoever else, I don't remember. The guy from The Shield. But way back then, when they cast Jessica Alba in that first as the first Invisible Woman, and he said, I'm pretty sure it was him. Yeah, it was John Byrne, and he came out and he was just like, well, I mean, it just looks kind of trashy when you give a Hispanic lady like blonde hair, and it was like, Jesus, guy, wow, And Jake and I have talked about on the show before how like Frank Miller is a great example. Now he's come back around a little bit, but it's hard to forgive him for like a lot of the shit he did. As much as 300 is a literal almost Bible of white supremacy, or rather supremacy of some sort. Look, the symbolism isn't like really tough to break through in 300. Okay, all the good guys are white and all the bad guys are brown. Just hey, I still like it, but I also know that the story is limited by its rather heavy-handed, symbolism, which is really a bad message anyway. So, but Byrne is another part of that. He's another part of that that creator that I still like, even though I know, Jake, I'm sure, has talked about in his segment why is he such a piece of shit. But that first Byrne run in late 80s, early 90s, Sensational She-Hulk, she was the first one to break the fourth wall. The moment where she breaks through the TV show into the Disney Plus app menu, like, that is straight up. Jake and I have talked about it many times. I brought it up on the show. There's I believe it's issue number 4 of Sensational She-Hulk, and she is dealing with this Dr. Bong guy who's got a big bell for a head, and she's trapped in this Bong vision. I know the symbolisms for like weed and stuff are all around, but it really has nothing to do with weed, honestly. Well, maybe. But she rescues all these civilians through these who are also caught in this TV landscape, and then they're trapped. And she's like, no, and she rips through the comic page, and there used to be these full page spreads in the middle of comic books for like American Comics or Mile High Comics out of Denver, and it was all these back issue prices and stuff, pricing guide. And she like runs through, and she takes them across the little the full page, the double page spread, and it's awesome. It's super awesome. And when she did that, I was like, yes, like this is yes. So, it's kind of like there are a lot of artists who have been quote unquote canceled, and some of the people that we try to take down, or rather try to show how simple, single-mindedly bigoted they are, and just sad. But one of the things we talk about that they rail against is like cancel culture. And here's the thing, like we shouldn't want to watch any Kevin Spacey movies. I think the only one that I've wanted to watch was like Usual Suspects, and that's directed by another pedophile and sexual predator. So it's like, you know what? That movie's just done for me. I think I'm just gonna not watch Usual Suspects anymore. I don't watch X-Men 3 not because it's a shitty movie, because it has its moments. I don't watch X-Men 3 because I know exactly what Brett Ratner did to Elliot Page when he was acting as Kitty Pryde in that movie, and I know that he outed her, and right, okay, that's a whole nother thing. But the bottom line is that Brett Ratner was a piece of shit to him when he was her. So I don't watch that movie because it's like it's too I just don't want to watch, and knowing that that actor went through it. There are a lot of things, that musicians. I worked with a gender fluid person who is a huge Marilyn Manson fan, and I'm just like, really? Because Marilyn Manson is a piece of shit. And we started talking about like musicians and everything. Like, you shouldn't like Led Zeppelin. If you're against guys like being with underage girls, you shouldn't like Led Zeppelin. Or at least demand that Jimmy Page answers for kidnapping a 15-year-old girl for like 3 years and like keeping her captive in his castle. Yeah, look it up, man. Seriously. I'm just saying, like, there's a limit to some people's cancel culture, if you will, or being woke, I guess. I'm trying to think. There's another actor that really sucks, just sucks ass as a real person, and it's hard. Honestly, no. I know that there is. I can't think of it offhand, but right now, to me, if I know an actor's a horrendous human being or a reprehensible human being, like I don't want to watch anything that they're in. I just don't. I just really don't. And no, I just don't. But the bottom line is like, I think if there's one criticism I have, it's the Scar introduction. Both Jake and I were like, fuck that shit. And true, it's like, but if it's leading up to a World War Hulk thing type of thing, hey, great, awesome. But I really liked how they brought Matt Murdock back and Daredevil, and I liked how they had fun with that, and I liked how she had fun with like talking to her own writers. Just everything about the show to me, the episode was great. I was actually hoping that when I think it's Josh, the guy who injected himself with her blood and whatnot and turned into a Hulk briefly, I was really kind of hoping that he would do it and then he'd like explode. Like, to me, that would have been, just desserts, But I give She-Hulk absolutely, 12 stars out of 10 again. And you call me a Marvel shill all you want, but here's the big thing. Again, I've lived with these characters most of my life, and I don't have a problem when you race or gender swap them. So, I mean, maybe you guys need to get a life or just understand that, it's not that I'm not invested in these characters. It's just that I'm invested in the essence of these characters, and generally you can do the gender race swap if you want without losing the essence of the character. And the other thing too is that more people feel included in the conversation, and that's what it's all about to me. It's always what it's always been about. I grew up in a time when everywhere I looked there was an example of a successful, heroic white person for me to look up to. And if you have a problem with that changing, so that because more kids are not white, then I don't know, man, because you're not a kid. You don't need to, I don't know, man. But you know what it's time for? It's time for Tyler's Love Box. This week I'm talking about this new series. So first things first, a couple weeks ago, Jake and I talked about this Deadpool's Secret Wars, because we were talking about the lead up to the Secret Wars and how we thought that was going to go and everything. And I brought up that the Deadpool Secret Wars, and I grew up with the Secret Wars thing. Now, to give you a little perspective here, if you have a chance on Prime, there's a thing about Chris Claremont that it's a documentary. Go look at it, because it talks a lot about the Secret Wars crossover, or rather the big event back in the 80s. And it was basically the first big thing that a company that the two big companies had tried. It was kind of the big crossover. Now, Secret Wars 2 was when they really started involving other books. Now, don't get me wrong, like during the Secret Wars miniseries, like the characters in the books, like, the Fantastic Four book, it was, they dealt with the fact that these characters are gone on this battle world, whatever. But they weren't like exclusive tie-ins or what have you. I don't know, whatever. But the interesting thing is that they started doing it because they wanted to sell toys. And they got with, I think it was Mattel, and they started making all these toys up, or maybe it was Hasbro, I don't know. And that's Jim Shooter, the editor-in-chief, I think, of the time at Marvel, was like, okay, well, let's write this story and let's do this. And the storyline is great. Now, I'm not going to get too much into the Secret Wars. All I'm going to tell you is that I went into the comic store to get that, and when I went in there, they had this new series called Defenders Beyond, and it's by Al Ewing and Javier Rodriguez. Now, Javier Rodriguez and Al Ewing that's probably my favorite team of whatever. I can't remember the artist who worked on Silver Surfer Black with Donny Cates, but that was probably one of my favorite creative teams also. Just, wow. Just visuals, writing, just. But Defenders, the original series, or rather the first miniseries by Al Ewing and Javier Rodriguez, was really cool. I thought it was great. It introduced Galactus' mother. It took a couple of different characters from the Marvel Universe. You don't normally get the spotlight, so that was kind of cool to see. And it basically went back into like the prehistory of the Marvel Universe, which was really, really neat. I love it when they do kind of out there stories. Now, Defenders Beyond is another one, and they bring back Taya, who is Taia? I don't know. But she's Galactus' mother, and then they also, Doctor Strange apparently died. But now it's Blue Marvel, America Chavez, Tigra, and a version of Loki from a multiversal version of Loki. And they're traveling through everything, and they meet with the Beyonders at one point. Who have been dubbed actually the Omega Men and whatever. The reason why I'm talking about this is, again, the visual storytelling style that Javier Rodriguez uses and the sheer out there writing of Al Ewing. I mean, he's just writing on a plane above all of us, all the rest of us schmucks. But if you get a chance, it's on issue 3 right now. I got 2 and 3 at one comic shop, and then I got the first one because I like to read the whole story, But it was really great that I was able to catch up with these again. The other thing I'm looking forward to, again, it's called Defenders Beyond by Al Ewing, Javier Rodriguez by Marvel Comics. The other thing I'm looking forward to, and I can't wait to do a long box about it, is the first collected edition of Saga after they've come back. Because, again, I missed that one issue, and I'm never going to find it again. So I'm just going to have to wait for that. I think it's going to be 10, because I believe the first half of the series was 9 books. Can't wait to talk to you about that. But again, this week, just scheduling difficulties just didn't work out for us. But, hey, we're making it work. And I got more like off-box, specials coming up on YouTube. And we're, going to start writing some sketches for like our sketch comedy channel, which you'll be hearing about. So I'm just excited about all the brand new things that are going to be coming out from the off-panel, off-topic universe. And you should be too. And the best way to make sure that you're in on the loop is to subscribe and tell all your friends about it, and make sure that you tune in every week and get that subscription and with the notifications so that you know when new stuff drops. Anyway, I've been Tyler Allen, and this has been my half of Off Panel Off Topic this week. I'm not going to talk about Andor because I think this next week is going to be the finale. I will say I gave a huge fan of Andor's episode this week. It was great. But I think we'll talk about it again next week, maybe. I don't know. All right, peace. Love you guys. I'll talk to you next week or whenever we get back to doing our podcast the normal way. Later. Off Panel Off Topic with Jake and Tyler.